14 million Americans unemployed, 46 million Americans living below the poverty line. What can Washington do? What can President Obama and Congress do to affect this problem?
Well, I think they can do three things, big things. They can adopt strategies designed to unleash the massive amount of private capital that is accumulated but not now being invested. It's approximately $2.2 trillion in cash in America's banks that are not now committed to loans. A couple of hundred billion of that money has to be held back for the bad mortgages that the banks still own themselves. But there's about $2 trillion that could be used to as the cash reserves for up to $20 trillion in loans. So in theory, that would take the world out of its recession. And then the corporations of America, U.S.-based corporations, have in America and around the world about $2 trillion more that they have not decided to invest either in other countries or to use on compensation for their own employees and management or for dividends. That's the first thing. The second thing that they can do, highly related to the first, is to accelerate the resolution of the home mortgage crisis in America, which would make businesses more eager to borrow money to expand and consumers more willing to spend money. Mm-hmm. I think that this debt drag, it's very important that Americans understand that if you go back 300 or 400 years, as long as there's good data on this, these kinds of financial crises typically take about 5 years to get over, much, much longer than a normal recession. And we haven't been as prepared for that as we should be, to understand that what we're really trying to do is to beat a historical trend by getting over it more quickly. You can't do that unless we do on a larger scale what the country did in the S&L crisis, which is to flush the debt quicker, even if it's ugly and uneven. And what President Roosevelt tried to do in the Depression, when the people who issued mortgages held them, they basically took the housing stock off the market and then dribbled it back on as the economy picked up. So that's very important. And then the third category of things we can do are what I would say are dozens of other things that will strengthen our position today and tomorrow. That is, pick areas where the economy is growing. We need to bring back manufacturing. The one thing that the financial collapse did is it put us in a position to be competitive with manufacturing again on the high end. We need to focus on manufacturing. We need to focus on exports. We need to focus on green technologies. These are the kinds of things we can do. And there's literally dozens of other things we could do that would create jobs, including relaxing the visa program for immigrants who have backgrounds in science and technology and engineering, who themselves will create jobs. So there are literally dozens of things in that third category that would make a real difference. But the number of jobs they will create will be affected mostly by what we do in the first two categories. Can we unleash the cash, and can we clean up the mortgage mess?
Why is it so difficult now for Washington to do these things?
Well, I think, first of all, I believe now that everybody's focused on it, I think there will be an effort that will get bipartisan support to lower the corporate tax rates, restrict some of the credits and deductions, so that we can have a competitive system. Right now, our corporate tax rate at 35% is the second highest in the world. Only Japan is higher, and companies don't move out of there for different reasons. But our tax take, that is the percentage of corporate income we take, is 23%. The problem is it may be 10 for one and 35 for another, and there's no real connection between what the take is and whether there are companies that are creating jobs in America. So the only fair thing to do is to do a version of what we did with individual tax reform back in the 80s. We need to broaden the tax base by cutting down on the deductions and credits and lower the rates. I think that they will do that within a year. And I'd like to see some of that money repatriated now for free with no taxes. And we're the only rich country in the world that still imposes taxes on corporations on money they earn overseas when they bring it home. So they're not going to bring it home now because they don't have to pay it in any other country in the world, any other wealthy country. So I think they ought to be able to bring it back for nothing right now if they put people to work with it. And if they want to spend it on compensation or stock buybacks or dividends, let them pay the long-term capital gains rate and then use that money to seed the infrastructure bank to put people to work.
This sounds pretty business-friendly. I think a lot of businesses would like to hear that.
Yeah, I think we ought to do that. I think you will see some real progress in corporate tax reform in a way that will free up cash for investment in America. And on the housing thing, there's a lot of problems with that. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are under a conservator who so far has been very reluctant to let them write down home mortgages or lower the interest rate and lengthen the term on the theory that that makes their assets worth less money. But the truth is the current system makes their assets worth less money. Because if you keep foreclosing on homes where hardworking people are doing their best and you keep dumping foreclosed homes on the market at low prices, you drive down the value of the assets held by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The only way to really fix this is to flush this bad debt and deleverage the country in a hurry. I cannot emphasize the boost I think it would give the economy if we had a system that basically said, let's to people whose homes are worth less than the mortgages, you can write down the mortgage to the value of the home if you can make the payment, or you can lengthen the mortgage out and lower the interest rate if you can make the payment. If you can't make the payment, you have the option to lease the house. Turn in your mortgage, get a lease for 5 years, and if circumstances improve, you can buy your mortgage back at the value of the house then, so that nobody gets hosed here. You know, when the Tea Party started, they seemed to object both to the bailout of the big banks, claiming they were being protected from their own mistakes, which was true but irrelevant. If the financial collapse had happened, we would have all paid. Now, a lot of people argue that you shouldn't rewrite these home mortgages because they never should have taken them out in the first place. Why protect people? There's a big problem with that. First of all, the values of the houses have gone down so much now that they have affected people who were wise in taking out the home mortgage at the time, who looked like they could make the payments, including people. There are lots of people in America where the mortgage is worth more than the house who've never missed a mortgage payment. They're in good shape. And the economy's downturn has been so great that some people have lost their jobs and their ability to pay their mortgages who didn't do anything wrong when they took those mortgages out. I think it would really get us going in a hurry if we could flush this out.
The economy grew at a fast clip when you were president. The economy grew at a fast clip when President Reagan was president. Different policies. How much power really does a president have over the economy?
Oh, quite a bit, but the important thing is to disaggregate it and level with people. For example, if you look at President Reagan's policies, I give him a lot of credit for some of the deregulation work he did and for the bipartisan resolution of the Social Security problem. But I also think that his tax cuts, which were very large, spurred economic growth in a way that wasn't sustainable. That is like having an 8-year stimulus, because we never had permanent deficits before. We never had done that. And except for that first 8-year burst, that economic model has not been successful in producing jobs. Now, my program wouldn't have been successful either if we hadn't had a theory of private sector growth. That is, I was fortunate. I became president when the information technology revolution broke out of the 128 corridor of Massachusetts, broke out of the interchange companies in D.C., broke out of the video games companies in Texas, broke out of Silicon Valley into every aspect of American life. And we just put the hammer down on it. We did everything we could to accelerate it. And so it was 8% of our employment, 20% of our job growth, more than 25% of our income growth. What America will need for the foreseeable future, in my opinion, is a source of new employment that really drives us every 5 to 8 years, and a continuous expansion of these prosperity centers. Like, look at San Diego. It used to be a great Navy town, still is. But they now have more Nobel Prize-winning scientists than any other American city because it's a biotech center of America. So if we're going to lead the world in biotechnology, you're going to have hundreds of companies spin off out of what's going on in San Diego. In Orlando, it's computer simulation companies. The Defense Department and Disney World and Universal and Global Entertainment Arts. That's what we got to do in the future. It's the only thing I would say to the anti-government crowd is, we got to do what works, and what works is cooperation, not conflict.